So, Janet Devlin, fresh off the release of your most recent album, Emotional Rodeo, how's it all going?
It's going a bit mental, to be honest. I don't know. I don't necessarily know what I expected when releasing this record, but I'm pretty sure it's exceeded my expectations, which is pretty great. So yeah, it's just been a bit of a whirlwind, but in the best way.
Oh, that's fabulous. And I'm going to speak on behalf of the whole Shock Radio family here. And we just wanted to say a big thank you for the music you're putting out. It's going down a storm at the station,
Oh,
especially the track Red Flag, which was the early single in the run
mhm.
up to the album. That just went off when I introduced it to everyone at the station.
Oh, amazing.
How was the last couple of weeks with the whole album release been for you?
Do you know what? It's only just started to quiet down a wee bit now, and by quiet down, I mean I'm not literally talking all day, night and noon, and singing all day, night and noon. It's like there were days where it was like getting up stupid early, having my face on to just either be doing interviews or to do performances or to do TV or to do radio and everything all in one day kind of thing. But it's a good thing because even if you're tired, it's like imagine putting out a record, nobody wanted to chat to you. That'd be 10 times worse. Um, so it's been great and so far so good with the feedback as well, from my listeners, but also from people discovering the music and stuff like that, which has been yeah, fabulous.
That's super good to hear. As the title suggests, it's an emotional rodeo of an album. You know, it's one that's deeply personal to yourself, and we'll talk a bit more about that in the minute. In a minute. I get my words out. But what's the writing process like for this album?
Ooh, it's I wrote for like I must have wrote like 60, 70 songs, like I'm not even kidding you. But the first batch that I wrote, I'd been put on a medication. It's like an antipsychotic. It's a long story. But I got put on one and it was great for everything except for being able to access my feelings. So basically the first like 30 songs got binned. Then I got put on the correct medication and then also put on ADHD medication. And then I pretty much feel like I learned how I write songs best. Which is really interesting, especially after I've been doing this, what, like 13 years, to find out now. But here we are. Essentially, like what I do is, so like I don't watch TV, I listen to podcasts, but like watch the video podcasts. And I'll stick that on the TV. And like as I'm living life, I'll just like get like ideas. So like I wrote down the emotional rodeo, say for that song in particular. I got a title of that from an appointment with my psychiatrist where he's like, how are you feeling? And I was like, I feel like I'm an emotional rodeo. And I wrote that down and was like, oh, I need to do that. So then I take the title and then I'll literally make like a big glossary of terms and words, fill all that out, and then I'll get like a bunch of idioms or turn of phrases and research. So basically, I create this massive research document, and then at the bottom of the document, I give a bunch of like example verses and choruses and like just rhyme schemes, and then I'll dictaphone a few things down, and then I'll take that note into the session. If I'm doing a cool write, if I'm writing myself, I'll just write with all the research. But in the session, then I invite everybody into the little note, and then they can see all the research. And essentially, it means that nobody has to Google anything. It's all in one place, and literally songs get written in like less than an hour. So it's like a super efficient way to work, and I love nothing more than a deep dive in the evening. So it like fulfills that part of my brain as well.
I love that. I've never heard of anyone that just like putting so much detail in and then just spooling out songs. That's so like so exciting to hear. Um,
It's fun. It's fun. I definitely recommend it if somebody has tried different ways of working and they're not working for them. Try the research method.
and also the recording process, it was in Nashville, wasn't it? Like that's an incredible experience. How did you find that?
It was dope. I mean, I went out at the start of last year to road test how Nashville works because it's very different than how we record music here in the UK nowadays. Like, because a lot of the big studios are shutting down and it's not easy to afford doing an album in a studio with all the musicians. So, like, actually having everyone in the room at one time and you singing along is a totally different experience, but in the best way, because when you do music the other way, it's like somebody's laying down a guitar and you're like, but like imagine the drums are doing this and imagine the bass is doing this. and actually just being able to, so I'll go in and vocal with the band on like the first take, and then I'll come in and be like, I think it needs more of this, and can you play it more like that, and and I can navigate, and then go and actually like listen to it without having to use too much imagination and just being like, oh, that sounds great. So they work differently, and I actually really got on with that way of working, and we recorded like 21 songs in like 2.5 days. So it's very efficient as well. And then also the way, if anything, Nashville as a town, you have so many talented musicians, right? But talent doesn't necessarily pay the bills all the time because everybody's talented. And it means then you hire people that are not only amazing musicians, but like really fun, nice people as well. They're the ones that get the gigs. And the lads we hired like have played on some of my all-time favorite albums. So it was just a whole experience in and of itself.
Oh, that's mega. Like just going back to what you just said, 21 songs in 2.5 days. Was that like were you just running on like fumes at the end, or was it like full on powering through?
Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. Essentially, like I took out like my short list of songs, which was like 45 songs. And I'd picked like the 15, 16, actually probably, yeah, about 16 songs that I wanted to record. Um, and then we just kind of kept having more time. So it was like, we still got like 3 hours. I mean, do you want to try this? You want to try this? You want to try? And it just kept. I was like, oh my God, I'm running out of songs here. But it doesn't feel tiring or exhausting. It's like, if you take a kid to Disneyland, they're not gonna want to go home until their legs are falling off, and that's pretty much how I felt in the studio.
That's such a good analogy, the Disneyland analogy. I've so got to use that going forward. Um, but the songs on this album are so personal to you. Did you find it easier or harder in a way to write such personal tracks?
Um, I mean, what I found easy was writing the up-tempo numbers. They were so like Daddy, Country Singer, Catfishing, all the silly songs, so easy. I wrote a lot with friends of mine, maybe people I started working with years ago that have become friends. One of them in particular is Maddox Jones, who's an artist in their own right, and they're amazing. And they obviously know me, my life, what's going on. And they came in and we're about to start writing. And I'd literally just got out of a 3.5 year relationship the day before, right? And I turned up and he knew this, and I wasn't saying anything about it. And it was like, oh, so what do you want to write about today? And I was like, oh, well, I've got all these like ideas, like da da da, this idea, this idea, this idea. And it was like, He just turns to me and goes, so you're not going to write about the breakup? And I was like, oh, well, he's like, we're writing about the breakup, and that led to Funeral for My Best Friend, which is quite possibly I would say, oddly enough, the most vulnerable I've probably been in music, just for the oddest reason of like, um, being so close to an event it's rare that you get to write a song that close to it. And it hurt and it sucked to write, but also, the best thing about music obviously is that you take your pain sometimes and you get to turn it into art. And I think that it eases the suffering a little bit.
Looking on like such a close friendship group like that with like Maddox, and do you feel like that's like a vital thing that's spurred you on, but also something that's really needed to help you write such a personal album? There's like a support network.
Yeah, I mean, when I started making this album, you sit down with your team. So I sat down with management, and it was like, what do you want to achieve with this album? What do you want to do? And I just said, I want to have fun. I want to have fun, dude. Like, I think we deserve it after so many years of slogging. And that's what we set out to do. And I think that it's obviously easier to have fun when you're working with people that you really get on with, and that you don't have to hide parts of yourself from. And the reason why, like, say me and Maddox work together really well, or me and the producer Rue work really well together, is that sometimes I find it hard to say like negative things about something because I'm afraid of like hurting someone's feelings. But with Maddox and with like Rue, I can be like, oh, I don't like that song. I don't like this. No, 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 no. Where, and also they feel comfortable enough to me to go, you can do better than that. Come on. Is that the best you have? Like, really? You know, and I feel like there's like a level of accountability, and like I always believe in friendships where it's not always just based on getting on. I believe friendships are people that push you to be the best version of yourself, even if it is uncomfortable sometimes. And I love that that's translated into my music as well as my personal life.
I love how they've like inspired you and spurred you on to create such a varied album, because there's the hot and the happy, and then there's the cold and the deep in the album. Um, I'd like to just touch on the song "Whiskey on My Breath," because that was, whoa, it was moving the first time I heard that, and it discusses your struggles with addiction that you've had, um, and there's the line in the song, praying the good Lord sets me free because I'm tired of living like this, and you know that must have been such a difficult realization to go back to whilst writing that, but obviously having that support network to spur you on. But like, how difficult was it to take yourself back to that time whilst writing this album?
Do you know what? If there's something that I always get brought back to is the addiction and my mental health issues and things like this. And I think it's a good thing. Like be it interviews, be it writing sessions, be it making, like I did a documentary for the BBC about addiction in young women and things. And I think one of the biggest things about say staying sober is that you don't get complacent and you don't get comfortable, because it's very easy to forget the pain in which you were living in and think that, oh, I'm better now and I can just do whatever I want. It's not like that. So like using art and going back to those times is really healthy for me. And I think with that song in particular, it was writing about the phase where I'd almost accepted that I was just an alcoholic and that's what I'd always be, and I would just never reach my potential, and that was it. And I think that was a weird place to go back to now after, you know, actually I now love being alive and love living and love being sober. And I was blessed I got to spend the majority of my 20s sober. But to think back to a time where I just kind of thought that this was it is 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 sad, but also inspiring in the sense of, gosh, if you really just put your mind to something, you can do it, you know.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate you on how many years sober is it now?
So I did 3.5 years,
Yeah.
and then I relapsed because of a mental health condition that I didn't know I had. Then I went to rehab, took all my mortgage money that I'd saved up over the years and went to rehab. So went in there dirt broke, which is great, and then came out. So this January I'll be 6 years sober.
That's incredible. It's so inspiring to hear that story, and it got so bad, and then it was like I'm better, and then the relapse, and the fact you was able to pull yourself back out of it again.
Mhm.
Did you think you would be able to pull yourself out of it again that second time, or
Yeah, yeah. No, the second time it happened, I think I drank like 3 or 4 times. Right. Firstly, was shocked at how I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have a drink and I'm going to be drunk in seconds. I'm going to be a cheap date. And no, it was still an ungodly amount of alcohol to get me drunk. But by like the fourth time or whatever of getting drunk, I was like, well, clearly this is a sign that something is not right. And I don't want to go back to where I was, where it really did feel impossible when I was on my hands and knees, just, yeah, praying that God would just either take me off this earth or just take the addiction away from me. You know what I mean? And so the second time was more so just damage control, and I wouldn't have been able to go to a rehab for free because I wasn't I wasn't on death's door, essentially. So it was you either pay for it or you don't go to rehab, essentially. So it was more just wanting to stay on the same path before it got awful again.
Yeah, and you talk about that first time and how traumatic it was for yourself. How hard was it to get to that point to realize that you needed help, and how hard was it to reach out to somebody for help?
Oh my God. Oh, I tried getting sober so many times. and I can't tell you what the difference was this time. This time I properly got sober, I think it was I went to get help and they had none. And then this woman slipped me a card for the local AA meetings. And, my mum was over because she was so worried about me. And she walked my butt to the door, and I did want to go because truly, like, it's this weird, complicated relationship where you want so much to get better, but you have no concept of how or what to do. So going into the rooms, I know I'm not really supposed to talk about them, but like going into them truly changed my life, and there's people that have gone and then they say it did nothing for them, it's useless and la la la. And I think people forget that if you're not in the place to be wanting to get better, nothing's going to sound like getting better, and that's just the fact of the matter. Like, and I was just very lucky that you have that, it's free, and what you expect is not what you get. I went in expecting to be in a room full of alcoholics, and I went in because I went to a woman's meeting only first, and I just seen a bunch of well-dressed, successful, bubbly, charismatic women who had their life together, and I was like, how do I get a slice of that? So luckily there are resources out there, and not just for alcohol and addiction and stuff. Like, whatever issue you have, there will be a help group for it. Even if it has to be just online, there will be a room that you can go to share with people.
Yeah, that's a super inspirational story. And you touched on it earlier that you've since becoming sober, you've helped raise awareness by being on a BBC documentary. And what other bits of work have you done just to help raise awareness about addiction?
So addiction for me is like it's a mixed bag because like everyone has different reasons obviously for becoming an addict and things, but I didn't know it at the time, and I didn't know it till way after rehab either, that I actually had a condition called borderline personality disorder, which essentially when I got diagnosed with that and I looked up the criteria, everything made sense because I used to self-harm as a kid. So when I was like 10 years old, I was an anorexic by 14. I had a really awful relationship with alcohol. Even before I did TV or anything like that, it wasn't great. It just got worse. And like having so many like addictions, essentially. Like I've even got addicted to running in the gym at one point. You know what I mean? So when people say, "Oh, just try exercise," it's like, yeah, dude, I cried over my abs. All right, like it doesn't make a difference for someone like me. And basically, like I did the doc, which was it was amazing. It was hard. Like but it was so worthwhile, and like such a privilege to be able to be the person that they trusted to talk about such a serious topic. I did a book. Actually, here it is. I only just got new ones pressed. I did a book called My Confessional, which documents everything in chronological order, as to what I'd been through, and it unlocks the songs on that album. And I just talked about it, and then I had my YouTube channel where I would talk about my stuff and explain things in more detail, and just being just being honest, right? And then I started TikTok before lockdown, and then during lockdown, was just posting about my mental issues and addiction, and those things were doing well. So honestly, it's just I don't seem to hide the corners of myself, which other people would shy away from, and I think it's probably because I did reality TV as a kid, and you're praised for sharing. So yeah, so it just felt kind of, I don't know. I don't mind not being perfect. I don't try to keep up a facade of being so. So talking about heavy stuff feels natural, I guess.
It's such an inspirational, like a moving story, and I just want to thank you for being so open about that.
Mm.
And I just want to remind everyone that there is help out there, no matter what you're struggling with. Um, but there's also been a second addiction in your life in many many ways, and that's music. Um, could you take it back to the first time that you picked up an instrument and you was like, "Oh, I'm a musical kind of person."
Yeah, I think I was about 4 or 5. My parents had gone away to a wedding, and my grandfather was babysitting us, and I think he was a bit hard of hearing. Like, he didn't have the best ears on himself because he was old. Like, and I picked up my brothers to whistle because you don't learn to whistles in school till you're about 8. So it's like the Irish Celtic whistle. And when my parents were gone, I taught myself how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And my grandfather made me play it for my parents when they got back. So that then by 6 or 7, then I was in the Keeley band playing the whistle. And then by 8, I would say I was playing the fiddle as well. So I was just like straight into it. But that's not an uncommon story from where I'm from. Everybody does music, everybody sings, everybody plays, you know.
I love that. Like, just music is such an incredible thing. Can you remember your first musical inspirations?
First musical inspirations. That is a good question. I really loved Garth Brooks as a kid. I really did. I just like the storytelling of it. I don't know. Because I guess he doesn't always just sing about himself. I think he tends to sing more about others. I think the song that probably most inspired me as a kid, and it's one of those songs where you're like, I don't even remember learning that, but I just knew it, like you're born with it, which was The Gambler, Kenny Rogers. As far as like, because as a kid, you just want to hear stories, don't you? It's like whatever vessel that takes itself from. And Kenny Rogers, The Gambler, as a kid, like just the visuals, I can still see the images that I created in my head, whilst listening to that as a child. And I really loved that. And like there was a few other silly songs that I just remember, but yeah, I think Kenny Rogers.
Oh, what an absolute tune, by the way. Um, and you even ended up on the X Factor back in the 8th series, making all the way to a 5th place finish, which is wild. What was that process like?
Very, very surreal. Like I was a weird kid. I was a horse girl who was also an emo kid who was also just like never cool. I was never popular. I was picked on all through my teens, and eventually it stopped. And I was just kind of left alone with me and my weird friends, and everything was good. But like I came from a small school that was like 400 students, right? Like people didn't know who I was. Um, and then overnight, literally, like you're on the front cover of newspapers, and you're on the internet, and people are talking about you, and like you can't just go out of the house now without people coming up to you and stuff. And like that is a big change, and a whirlwind of a life. But like the show itself was great because I always feel like I need something to look forward to, or something to keep me on the straight and narrow, and the show's really good at that. It's like there was always the next week's performance to get to. And like I didn't audition, I guess, in the way that some people do. I mean, I missed the first day. That was the only day I missed. And that's because I sent in one of my YouTube videos, because I'd already started doing YouTube. I was seeing covers, and I think I had like 20,000 followers in like 2011, so before TV. And like one of my songs had popped off, and that was your song. So naturally, I obviously sent that in, but I still had to do like the bit. You see the footage of everybody lining up. Still had to do all that. Still had to audition like 8 times in one day, to then get back to do the judges audition. You know what I mean? But the show itself was great. It was terrifying and amazing, and I got to meet some of my absolute heroes in a way that most people will never get to meet those people. You know what I mean? So it was great.
Oh wow! And obviously, all the way to a 5th place finish. How did you feel about getting that far? Was it like a sense of pride, or was there a bit of disappointment about not going further, or?
No, I'll be real. My goal was to get to the tour. And I had already said the week before that I really wanted to go home. I'd confided in the team because it was, as much as getting further would have been cool or whatever, it was, my parents were always so supportive. Like anytime I was on the phone with my mom during the show, she would always just like say to me, like, we are so proud of you and we'll not think of you any different. If you want to come home now, you're welcome home anytime. You don't have to do this for any longer than you feel like you have to. For me, I wanted to get on the tour because that's when you get paid. And also touring sounds like good fun, right? So I wanted to get that far. And luckily, that's where I pretty much cut off, was just at getting on the tour. So I was happy to go. I'd kind of come up face to face with a few of my mental health stuff again, and was just feeling like I was feeling grateful. I'd gotten everything I kind of wanted out of doing it, which was, you could just kind of performing on a global stage, but also kind of hopefully keeping some followers that want to hear you make music in the future and stuff. So yeah.
And you were so young during this time as well. Was that a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was being absolutely harassed on a daily basis by adults, which is not ideal. I think it only came to a head whenever I went home afterwards. Um, and I was so excited to go home and just be in my pajamas eating super noodles, you know what I mean? That's all I wanted. And to see my dogs and my mum and dad and sit by the fire, and be in the countryside or whatever. And then I would like just want to go hang out with my mates. So we just go to the bar. And then, I would get to the bar and I just would get verbally harassed by strangers all night. Not people coming up and being like, "Oh, I thought you did really well," or anything. It was just abuse. So then I kind of became a little bit of a recluse. But I still am kind of amazed at my younger self for things that were important to me as when I was doing it, which was like, if I was getting dressed up for a photo shoot or the performances, and say there was times where it was like, that is a lovely outfit. I think it's lovely. It flatters me very well, but I don't think it's appropriate for a 16-year-old to be wearing. Because like after the audition, you're put on this pedestal of everybody calling you like a role model, and it's like, I never signed up to be one of those, but it's not your choice. So I made sure that the costumes and things that I was wearing, would I be okay seeing my little cousin wearing that, and also, even when it got really hard, like when you get stressed, some of your issues come back up, and I remember being like, wanting to lose weight essentially, because of my past eating disorder history. And I remember being like, you can't lose weight, because what's going to happen is then if you lose so much weight, then little girls are going to look at you and go, well, she's allowed to be that skinny. Why can't I be that skinny? And I never wanted to be one of those people on those Thinspiration pages that was not the goal. So it was very good at keeping me on the straight and narrow. And I don't know, I was just amazed that those things were important to a 16-year-old.
Yeah, no, it's a super important thing to be so self-aware of at 16. That it just speaks volumes about you as a person and your character. And I've got one final question for you before the Zoom meeting times us out. Um, you've done so much so far, and such an incredible story up to this point. But what is next for Janet Devlin?
Oh, I'm just dying to write more. Like, I feel like I finally got the swing of myself, as in like the stuff that really I'm passionate about, and also obviously validating that these things have done better than anything I've done in the past, and it's like, oh, I found my foot, and I just want to get back in the writing rooms. I want to get back in the studio. I want to get on tour next year, which apparently is looking like it's happening. So if you want to come see the show on the road, then come on ahead. So there'll be that, and just probably more releases, and just you know, getting to do the fun stuff of making videos and acting the lally online for music, you know. So there's hopefully even more music to make and some playing that live.
Well, I speak for everyone here at Shock Radio when I say we are all super excited for that. We can't wait for new music coming on tour. I heard Manchester's a great place to come and play music. So
Here, everybody keeps saying this as if I don't want to go to Manchester. I love Manchester. I've spent recreational time there. I mean, I dated someone from Manchester for quite a bit, and I loved it. Like, I'll go there just for the vintage shops. You know what I'm saying?
it's not a bad city. It rains all the time, but just get an umbrella in it.
You just suck it up. Don't be a baby. You know.
Exactly that. Well, I just want to say thank you so much. You know, you've talked through such a story of triumph and through the darkest times, and you're here making incredibly powerful music. And I just want to say, from all of us, we can't wait to see what's
Aw.
around the corner.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time.